I never thought I'd experience it myself, thinking that it was just some made-up folklore and stories we'd tell each other to get a good scare, until I finally did. And let me tell you, what happened to me that night wasn't just terrifying, it was deeply traumatizing. It was late, a typical night, and I was laying in bed scrolling through my phone, trying to fall asleep. My room is on the first floor of a 3-story house, facing the front yard. The night was cool and quiet, almost too quiet. I wasn't thinking about much, just trying to drift off to sleep. Then I heard it. Initially it was a cat, I presumed, yowling. At first, I didn't think anything of it. It's a sound I've heard before. Stray cats fighting in heat, or mating just being their usual noisy selves. But this was different. It was eerie. The yowling wasn't just a cat in heat. It was raw and desperate, a kind of noise that made your blood run cold from the sheer volume and intensity. The sound echoed through the night, tearing at the stillness. It seemed to be coming from right outside my window. I was irritated, annoyed more than anything. But I got up and went to the window to see what was going on. I was already too tired to deal with it, but curiosity got the best of me, so I peeked outside. Nothing. The street was empty, bathed in the dim light of the street lamp. No cat, no sound, just the quiet, empty night. Ticked off since I couldn't find the source of the noise, I returned back to my bed, trying to shake off the weird, uneasy feeling settling in my chest. The house was still once again, the ambient sound of crickets and cicadas melding into a cacophony, creating an eerie atmosphere. After tossing and turning for a while, I grabbed my phone and tried to focus on the screen, willing sleep to overcome me. But then it came again, louder this time, closer, that same mind-numbing yowl. My patience was wearing thin at this point. Feeling my blood pressure rise, I groaned and got up, making my way back to the window. I was already tired and frustrated, so I was not in the mood to deal with whatever animal was causing this nonsense. But when I looked outside again, there was nothing. The yard was empty. The street lamp's light casted long shadows, distorting its shape, making it look like a dark, slender figure. It looked a little off-putting, but I knew it was just a trick of the light. There was no cat nowhere to be seen. Eager to find the source of the intruding noise, so I can be at ease, I stayed by the window a little longer, scanning the shadows, waiting for the sound to reappear. But nothing. Absolutely nothing. I was starting to feel quite unsettled. The sound, though absent, seemed to reverberate in the air, ringing in my ears. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right, but I forced myself to shrug it off. I turned off my phone, lay back down in bed and closed my eyes, hoping sleep would overtake me once again. And just when I thought I can finally rest, I heard it. That groaning sound. Louder, more urgent this time. That same, deafening yowling. But this time, the yowling sounded different. It sounded as if someone or something were trying their very best to imitate the sound of a cat yowling. To make things worse, adding to my growing fear, it sounded as if whatever was making that noise were right inside my room. I bolted up, my heart racing. My mind scrambled to make sense of it. How could whatever it was be inside my room? There was no way, but it was there, faint but unmistakable. The sound was all around me, encompassing itself among the darkness of my room. I raced to the corner of my room, my hands shaking as I flicked on the light switch. In a daze, my eyes adjusting to the bright light, I noticed something immediately. The moment the light flooded my room, the sound had stopped. It went dead silent. The sound of the night breeze and crickets chirping in the distance all seemed to suddenly come to a halt. For example, when in nature, when an apex predator is lurking and all animals go silent, it was just like that. The sudden silence felt so wrong. It felt as if I were being watched by something. Something that can see me, but I couldn't see. My pulse hammered in my ears as I stand still, unable to move. I stand there frozen, staring into the empty room. Nothing. No cat. No yowling. Just pure silence. I began wondering if I was losing my mind. I left the light on the whole night. I didn't want to be in the dark again. Mortified, I just stood there, staring at the corners of my room, while simultaneously staring outside my window. The only sound I could hear was my heart pounding in my chest. Every second felt like it stretched onto eternity. The air was thick with this feeling of dread looming over me, as though something was there watching me, waiting. 20 minutes passed, maybe 30, 40, I lost count. But nothing happened. I began to convince myself it had been nothing, just a trick of the mind since it was so late. I turned off the light and sank back into bed, finally feeling exhaustion take over. I closed my eyes, willing myself to go to sleep. And I did. As I managed to fall asleep, I relaxed and eased a little bit, but it was short-lived. I found myself in a dream, a nightmare that felt like one of those dreams where you're reliving memory you had, but it was twisted and its events altered. I was running down a street, my street, but it was wrong. Everything was warped and distorted. The trees bent at odd angles, the shadows stretched too long, the sky looked odd. Confused too as why I'm running, I looked behind me. I couldn't see anything, but I knew something was chasing me. I could feel it, the weight of it, the pure anger and hatred emanating from whatever it was. But I couldn't bring myself to look back again. Giving in to my fear and piquing curiosity, I couldn't take it anymore, so I glanced over my shoulder while sprinting at full speed. And there it was, an entity. It was enormous, darker than anything I had ever seen. Its form shifted and morphed like shadows dancing in the night. It was impossibly large, towering over me. Its eyes glowed a dark red, and I felt a cold rush of dread wash over me as it moved closer, its footfalls shaking the ground beneath me. I turned and ran as fast as I could, but it was gaining on me, getting closer and closer. I felt it come right up behind me, its breath on the back of my neck. It chuckled, a laughter, low and guttural, echoing in the air. And then suddenly a vape bang went dark. My eyes adjusting to the darkness, I blink a couple of times before I see it, right in front of me. As the entity lunges at me, I try to shield myself, covering my face with my arms, but I suddenly get jolted back to reality. Waking up, my heart racing, the alarm blaring in my ears. The room was slightly lit with the light of early dawn, the familiar sounds of the house around me. But something was wrong. I sat up, confused, still feeling the terror of the dream clinging to me. That creature or entity, whatever it was, it felt so real. And then I noticed it. The light I had left on the previous night was no turned off, but what unsettled me the most was my window. It was open. I'd locked it the night before, right after the whole situation with the yowling being inside my room. I was sure of it, but there it was, slightly ajar, as if someone had opened it up and hastily tried to close it. I froze. I couldn't explain it. My mind scrambled to make sense of it, but I couldn't. My heart pounded in my chest as I hurried to the window, closing it, locking it tight. But the feeling I had from the night before, the feeling of being watched, it never left. The rest of the day passed in a haze. I was distracted during work, unable to shake the thought of the nightmare, the terrifying visuals I had of that dark thing chasing me. Although it was a dream, I remembered its features so vividly. I knew something wasn't right. I tried to ignore it for the time being and continued with the rest of my day. Coming back home after a grueling day of work, I was treated to an unexpected surprise. When I pulled into my driveway later that evening, I saw it. A black cat. It darted across the yard fast, almost at an unnatural speed. I stopped and got out of the car, thinking I'd check on it. I didn't want to be paranoid, but something about that cat made me connect the dots. I felt quite off. I looked around and lo, and behold, that cat was gone, nowhere to be seen. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I went inside, still feeling very queasy about this whole situation, so I tried to distract myself with video games, and it did help a little, but the feeling of dread gnawed at me. It felt as if someone or something was just waiting, barely out of sight, stalking me. I went to bed early that night, hoping for the rest I couldn't get the night prior. But as soon as I felt myself nearing sleep, I heard it again. The same noise I heard last night, the cursed yowling. Distant, faint at first, but after a couple of minutes it was louder, closer. I wanted to ignore it. I wanted to believe it was just some stray cat who was in heat, that was hiding in someone's garage or something, but deep down, I knew it was no ordinary cat making that god-awful noise. Despite the yowling, I somehow managed to fall asleep, accepting whatever was out there was just a cat. However, as if on cue, I felt a sense of dread unlike anything I'd had ever felt before. I awoke immediately, blinking rapidly to adjust my eyes into the darkness. Trying to get up, I realized that I couldn't move. I was paralyzed, but it felt like something was pressing down on me. My body refused to obey. Panic arose in my chest as I struggled to move my limbs. Realizing during the moment that I was having an episode of sleep paralysis, I began reciting an incantation in Islam called Ayatul Kursi, a prayer that gives whoever recites it a means of protection against malicious entities. I could only move my eyes, so I screamed the prayer in my mind. While reciting it, I slowly began regaining control of my body, and doing so I was able to slightly turn my head, and I looked over to my window. There it was. The cat I had seen in my driveway when I came home from work today. The damned black cat who was at the center of all this blasphemy. It was sitting on the windowsill. The window, again, was open. Its eyes glowed the same dim red in my nightmare. Its yowling was a screech now. It was practically screaming, but something was wrong. So terribly wrong. This was no ordinary cat. Its limbs bent at an odd angle, and something about its eyes didn't seem right. As I lock eyes with this cat, I suddenly freeze in horror as I watch its body contort and morph. I watched as its legs twisted and bent backwards. It was like its bones had been rearranged, contorting in ways that no living can survive. The sight of it made me feel sick to my stomach, my skin crawling as I take in this insidious sight. I wanted to scream. I wanted to yell for help so badly, but I still couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Then, the cat did something impossible. It stood up on its two bent legs and it smiled at me. The damn thing straight up looked at me and grinned, its face turning demonic. My heart stopped. I was frozen. It moved closer, its twisted limbs jerking, the unnatural movement sending waves of terror throughout my body. It was only a few feet away when it dropped back to all fours and began to morph. Its body stretched, the fur dissolving into darkness. The form of the cat was now gone, replaced by a void of emptiness. A mass of black energy that pulsated and rippled, its shape constantly shifting. And then I heard it. A voice. A ragged voice, sounding like someone whispering. The words sounded strange, foreign, but somewhat recognizable for me. Something between Urdu and a language I had never heard of before. It didn't matter though. All I cared about was getting out of this situation. The sound of its voice made my blood run cold. By this time I had finished reciting Ayatul Kursi and began regaining control of my limbs. Just as I was about to move without warning, the creature looks at me, its demonic grin dissipating into pure anger. It lets out an awful blood-curdling shriek and jumps out of the window, looking at me one last time before its body, twisting in the night, disappears into the shadows. I lay there motionless, paralyzed. The terror clung to me like a second skin. I was dumbfounded. Did that really just happen to me? Am I safe after that? Will it come back for me again? These questions stuck with me a while after my encounter with that entity. I couldn't sleep that night, nor the night after. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt that same presence, lurking just beyond my perception, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. As time passed, days stretched into weeks, weeks into months, but that strange cat never showed up again. Hopeful, I wish it was gone for good, but I knew it was still out there, watching, waiting for me at my most vulnerable state. I realized at the time I was at a low point in my life. I wasn't very religious and participated in a few illicit activities, including, but not limited to, smoking and drinking, having sex often with women who I wasn't married to, and just not having a nice clean home. All things that jinns are attracted to. In the days that followed, however, things seemed pretty normal. A bit too normal. But every time I passed a reflective surface, a shadow flickered at the edge of my vision. Every time I closed my eyes in the dark, I felt the weight of unseen eyes violating me. The terror of what I saw, what I heard, never truly left. It clung to me like a second skin. And every night, as I try to sleep, I can sometimes still hear it. The faintest, most chilling yowl in the distance. Closer, always closer, never truly leaving me. The unseen, its beady red eyes watching, just waiting for me to make a mistake.